Hello everyone, Ross the music teacher. Today I'm going to show you guys 4 secrets to make switching between chords a bit easier and a little more process oriented when you're learning to do it. These are the best technique tips that I think I've gotten from my 2 teachers, Benjamin Cantu and Jonathan Leithwood. Benjamin showed me the first 3. Jonathan Leithwood helped me click number 4 into place. And I've just found them so extremely helpful. And in lessons, when I show people this, they are usually pretty overjoyed to learn that these types of strategies exist. Pay special attention to the 4th one. And at the end of the video, I'm going to issue you guys a little challenge so that you can take this into the practice room yourselves. The first tip is what is called the plant finger. So sometimes when you're playing chords, you might have a finger that can just stay in place, and it allows you to get from one place to another. So let's do a couple examples here. One of the biggest questions I get for kind of first position beginner chord changes is, how do I go from D minor to F major? That's a really tough one, and usually you'll see people play their D minor. Usually they'll actually play with their 3rd finger here. They'll pick up their whole hand and try to move to an F major, and usually they'll move their hand way out. And there's a lot easier ways to do this. So first things first, I'm going to set up a nice comfortable D minor, and I want you to understand that I'm doing my 1st finger on the high E 1st fret, pinky on the 3rd of the B, and 2nd finger for the 2nd of the G, and of course my open D. Now, when we switch to the first position F major bar chord, that chord, of course, is a bar on the 1st fret, 3rd finger, 3rd fret of the A, pinky, 4th fret of the D, 2nd finger, 2nd fret of the G. Now, that's the important one, and of course, your bar. So, you'll notice that the 2nd finger stays on the G in the same spot the whole time. So, when I'm switching between these chords, I can actually leave that in place, and it kind of acts like a leg for my entire hand to go off of. Now that is really, really important. That's one of the best things that you can learn as a beginner that is just learning to switch between chords. So let's say I tried to switch from A minor to C major, and I lifted up all my fingers and tried to land here. Well, as it so happens, I only have to lift one finger. The other 2, it's like a double plant finger, can just stay right in place, and my 3rd finger can just move. And that's a lot easier than lifting up all your fingers and then just moving. Let's do perhaps a little bit more of an advanced example. Let's do D major to B minor, and I recently did a video on this. Now, I'm doing my D major with a bar on these 3 strings, 2nd fret, G, B, and high E, 2nd finger on the B string, 3rd fret. And to get to B minor, we are going to just keep that 2nd finger in place. So when you're switching between these 2 chords, was once something where someone would use this D major and then move to this B minor, and it's kind of tricky. Now it's a lot easier because you're starting with this kind of alternative fingering and keeping one finger in place so that you can set the other chord a lot easier. The next trick is what's called the guide finger. Now, this is a lot like the plant finger, except the position of your hand moves. So let's start with the D minor chord again. And let's say we're actually going up to this C major chord, which is barred on the 3rd fret. Now, this is our bar 3rd fret, and then you're also placing your middle finger on the 5th fret of the D, your ring finger on the 5th fret of the G, and your pinky on the 5th fret of the B. Now, typically, somebody that's playing with their D minor like this, and they're jumping up here, and they're placing the bar, that's going to be a tough one to kind of manage. Now, if I were to do it, what I would do is I would recognize, okay, well, my pinky's on the B string. It's not on the fret it needs to be, but what it can do is it can slide up the string while I set my chord up, and then all of a sudden that chord change is not as hard, not nearly as hard. So if we're setting up our fingers intelligently, then we can get right up to that chord without too much of an issue, make it nice and smooth, and be on our way. The next trick is called the ghost finger. So this is kind of a silly name, but it really makes things a lot easier. It makes you kind of think through your progression. So let's say you're a beginner guitarist and you're trying to learn the E minor to C major switch, or vice versa. You could come from the position that a finger can be in place either before it's even time to have it there, or right before it's time, like right when it's time to have it there. So let's check out if we were to do our E minor chord here and switch to C major just by placing these two fingers. So my pinky, I'm just going to place it on the 3rd fret of the A and index 1st fret of the B. It's the same chord, it's just different fingers. And now what you have is your middle finger here is kind of like your ghost finger. So if we are switching from C major to E minor, this finger isn't being used yet, but it's already in place, kind of like a ghost until it's time to show up. Now there's a couple other ways, that you can do this. I'm going to show you a couple more examples so that you can figure this out in your own practice. We're going to go from D major to D7 and then resolve it to a G. So that's a kind of a popular type of progression. And what we're going to do is we're going to play our D major with our pinky 3rd fret of the B, our 2nd finger 2nd fret of the G, and our ring finger on the 2nd fret of the high E. And we're going to place our index on the B string 1st fret before it's even time, and then all we got to do is lift up our pinky, and then we've got that chord progression. I usually see people play that where they switch from here and then they jump to here, and it's not so smooth. But if you can do it and then just place your pinky for the G. I'm just playing the top 4 strings. Of course, the full G is like that, but this is just an example. So that's the ghost finger. Next tip you're really going to want to pay attention to because it kind of ties it all together. Okay, so the 4th and final strategy for getting from one chord to the next, which was shown to me by my teacher, Jonathan Leithwood, is called the sequence. And essentially it's the last 3, but they're all done in a sequence, and then you speed it up to the point where it is one motion. So let's start with an easier example. One of the first progressions that people will learn is your C major to G major. Now, a lot of people will find this difficult, so we're using the basic C major, and then for G major we're using our ring and middle on the 2nd and 3rd of the E and A, and putting the pinky up there, 3rd fret of the high E. So the first way to get between these two using a sequence is to treat your index as a plant finger and lift these fingers up, and then place them into the G and lift this finger up right when it's time to play. So we're going to have a lift, place, lift, and then you're going to hit it again. And eventually what you want to do is you want to speed those all up to basically the same motion. Now another way that you could do this is treat your pinky like the quote-unquote ghost finger and just place it right before it's time to play it, and then move these up. So it's like a place, move, and then you strum again. And that works just as well as the other way. Sometimes you want to use one way versus another, but really they're kind of interchangeable, so I'd learn them both. Now, what if you needed to like switch positions while switching chords? So for example, I've been asked about C major to C minor, which is a bit of a more of a difficult progression because you're here in 1st position and then you have to be up in a bar chord in 3rd position. So how would you approach this? Well, you would maybe treat your pinky like it is a ghost finger and you place it on the string, and you just kind of learn to place it and lift, because that ghost finger is also going to become a guide finger connecting these 2 chords. Then in place you can learn how to switch. So place this and then switch these fingers to that chord. So you just kind of place, 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 place. And then what you do after that is you move while you place. And now you have a nice smooth transition between these 2 chords, going up 3 positions and switching from an open chord to a bar. It's pretty tough, but if you can get the sequence of these last 3 steps down, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so to close this lesson off, first off, I want to say this is some of the best information for chord switches, and you can also use it while you're playing fingerstyle guitar. I explain these things in a lot of my, how to play this or that piece lessons, but this is the first video I've had where I distill them down. It's some of the best information I've gotten from my teachers, so definitely use it, practice it, try to apply it to your own practice. And here is your challenge. I'd like you to come up with a list of chord progressions, maybe the top 10 chord progressions that you can't do or you struggle with, and try to figure out either a single motion or a sequence of motions that will get you to playing these things that you couldn't play before. Also, don't forget to check out Music Theory in One Lesson and have fun. That's on Amazon.com.